Hey there and welcome to Let's Create a Game. In this episode we're going to add some new enemies to the game and give the player an ability to shoot in order to keep up with the new enemies. So let's continue creating a game. Let's start with the creation of our first enemy. In the last video we've already created the graphics for our basic enemy chat, so we've already added it to the project as well. The only thing what's left is the coding. Last time we've set up our sprite class, which we are going to use for the enemy as well now, because it has most of the attributes in common. So let's create a new namespace to get some structure in our project. Let's call it enemies, and here we create a new class, enemy. The enemy class will also be an abstract class as well as the sprite class, where each specific enemy we are going to create will derive from that enemy base class. Now I've just implemented the sprite class methods and made it abstract too. Now I've also added some basic attributes which every enemy will have, like hit points and armor and of course speed. And now I'm just creating a method damage, which will be called when a player bullet hits the enemy, and this will just reduce the damage which the bullet is dealing from the hit points of the enemy, and the armor protects the enemy, so this value will be reduced from the damage dealt. Then we create a property destroyed. Now this is our enemy base class, so let's create a specific enemy class for our straight moving enemy first. Let's call this just straight enemy. So this will derive from our enemy class. And this class is actually pretty simple as well. Just works pretty much like the player. So this should move in a straight direction. So let's fetch the milli, or the elapsed seconds. The speed multiplied by these elapsed seconds to the position, to the horizontal position in that case. And that's pretty much it for the update method. The draw method is also pretty simple, just a sprite_batch.draw call with the texture what we have from the sprite class, the rectangle, and no blending. And in the constructor we just set some basic values. We don't need to set these two because these are constant values, or rather just set them here. Some kind of have to try, maybe adjust later. Yeah, here we just set the texture. Oh, we need a function in the level class, a convenience function to load textures. That would be pretty handy. Let's just call it public text2d load texture with the given path. And here we return game.content load texture2d content textures. No content, we don't need the content, textures, and the path, because we will often need to load the textures from outside the level or the games class, so this will be convenient. Straight enemy, so we can call here level.loadTexture with our texture name, which was enemy 01, I think. Then we set the hit point attribute to some value, points 10. The armor, well, let's just set it to 0 in this case. Oh, we also need to set the speed to some value, of course. And this is wrong too. Oh, we are going to introduce a direction variable in the, let's say, in the enemy class. Let's use a vector for this, because the enemies won't always move in the same direction, so this will be handy sometimes. In this case, the direction is -1 and 0, so in the opposite direction of the player, and we need to multiply it with the direction vector as well. Oh, of course. Right, now we will add a list of sprites to our level class. And this will contain all sprites which are somewhere in the level. This will contain our enemies as well as our power-ups, which we're going to add later. And in the update method, we are iterating through our sprites and calling the update method of the specific sprite. And the same in the draw method. Well, let's put it this way. Draw with the sprite batch. So now let's add some enemies to our sprite list. Right, now let's just run it and see if there are some enemies actually. Oh, they are there, but they are a little too fast. And let's also adjust the size of the player, because it's a bit too large. And the enemies were a bit too short, I think. Don't know. They were too fast. Let's set the speed value to maybe 200. Try again. And this looks better. Cool. Alright, next we'll add the shooting functionality for the player, and for that we need some bullet textures first. So I headed over to Inkscape to create some very basic bullet texture. Doesn't need to be detailed because in the game it will be very small and very fast. So just a very basic shape and maybe some color. Okay, good enough for now. Okay, so let's add the texture we've just created. Bullet 1. And build the project. Great. Now we're going to create our bullet class first. This will be very much like our enemy class. It also derives from the sprite class. The difference is that in the constructor we will pass over some additional attributes like the texture, and what else are we going to need? Maybe the speed, and the damage, which we haven't created yet. Let's create a altogether for that. An integer damage. And of course direction. Next thing we want is a class called weapon. In this class we will just store some information about the current weapon the player has. Things like the cooldown and the bullet type, bullet texture, bullet width. So this class will only contain some attributes. Next thing, we are adding 2 more lists to our level class. One list for the player's bullets, so the bullets that the player shoots. These lists can be public. Player bullets. And one list for the enemy bullets, if we have shooting enemies. But for now we only need the first list, the player bullets. Let's initialize those 2 lists. When the player shoots, a bullet will be added to the player bullets list, and it will be updated here. Now let's add the collision detection check, which will detect if a bullet hits an enemy for now. And if that's the case, let's remove the enemy and later play on some destroy animation. We're doing this in the update method of the level class and inside the iteration of the sprites. Now I've called the method intersect to check whether the 2 rectangles, the one of the bullet and the one of the current sprite, intersect with each other. And if that's the case, a collision takes place and the enemy will take damage. For that we already have programmed the method damage from the enemy class. Now we need to figure out the damage of the current weapon of the player, of course. For now, let's just replace that for some random value. And then, if the enemy is destroyed, then play some animation. We'll do that in the next video probably. And of course, remove the sprite. Sprites remove sprite. So now let's add the shooting functionality to the player class. We need some new variables. First, we need a list of weapons the player can get. Weapons. Then we have an integer with the current weapon index. And then we are probably going to need some kind of a timer for the cooldown. Shoot timer. So now in the update method, let's just create a plug shoot. We are first increasing the timer with the elapsed seconds. Then we are asking if some key is pressed. Let's use the spacebar for shooting. Is key down keys dot space, and the cooldown is ready for another bullet to shoot. So shoot timer bigger than weapons current weapon index dot cooldown. If that's the case, then a bullet can be shot. So let's reset the shoot timer. Then let's fetch the current weapon. And let's add a new bullet instance to the player bullets from the level class. So, oh, of course we need a reference to the level in our player. We haven't yet added this. Right, that should be it. We add a new bullet instance with all the attributes from our current weapon and the position of our player with a little offset, so it looks like it shoots from its gun. Now the next thing is we need a weapon, of course. Let's create one weapon. Let's first instantiate the list and then let's just call it weapon 1. New weapon and set all the attributes. Is this a float? It's an int value. I think this should rather be a float value because we have seconds. Yes, absolutely should be a float value. So let's just set this to 100 milliseconds maybe. Okay. Now we need to replace this value with the actual player's weapon's damage. Let's create a function for that. Public int get weapon damage, get current weapon damage. Return weapons current weapon index dot damage. Right. Player dot get. Okay. We also need to remove the bullets sometimes. First case when the bullet hits a sprite, of course, I forgot that. Player bullets dot remove bullet, and if the bullet is out of screen we also want to remove it, because otherwise we'll get a lot of bullets hanging around nowhere. We create two variables, camera x, which is the absolute of the camera position, and now we of course we also need to update the bullets as well. Update bullets, and here is update sprites. The bullets need to be updated as well, so we need another iteration here. Now let's check if the bullet is on screen. Okay, if that's the case, it will be updated as usual, and otherwise it will be removed from the list. Okay. So I think it's time for another test run. Let's just check it out what happens. It crashes, I think. Yeah, null reference exception. Oh, of course the level, we cannot use this convenience method here because the level at this time, the constructor of the player is called the level is not yet initialized. So let's just use the other method. Game content load, texture 2D. Right, this should do it. Another try. And it runs. So let's see if we can shoot. We cannot shoot. Weapons. Oh, stupid mistake. Did not add the weapon 1 to our list. Weapons, add weapon 1. And another try. And we still cannot shoot. Yeah, we need to mix some changes to this, because the level here, the player gets initialized during the initialization of the level itself, so this kind of doesn't work that way. So we need to add a reference to the player itself in the game class, in our main game class. Okay, now I think, oh, here we also have to pass over the player to the level. Now I think everything should be fine again. Let's try it out. Here we have to replace this one as well. Let's give it another try. Way better, but I pressed the spacebar and nothing happens. Oh, of course, I don't draw the bullets. Simple as that. Should be all, actually. Another try. And we get another exception. Oh man, we didn't set the texture in the constructor. A lot of rather bad mistakes, actually. Let's press another time to start. Oh, we shoot, but it looks kind of odd. I think that's a problem of our texture now. Let's head back to Inkscape. Oh, of course, we need to move this to a white area, so otherwise if we export it over the blue background, the blue background will be exported to within the rectangle. And the size was a bit too high, so let's decrease the size of the bullets, like 60 to, I don't know, 7. And the speed was a bit too low, 1000, and the cooldown was also a bit too low. Let's set this to 3. And let's try another time. Okay, looks better, but now the texture didn't actually, it's still the same texture if I see it correctly. Oh, another bug we have to fix. We'll do this. Yeah, that cooldown is a little bit too high now. Let's set this to 1.15. Let's try another time. Okay, now it's the right texture. Oh, and the sprite already disappeared. Okay, so we can shoot. So now let's fix the bug with the background. This will be the last thing we do in this video. Okay, so I did a little research and I found a better approach to the background thing. There is this function, the sprite badge.begin, and here we can pass over some interesting attributes. The deferred is not too interesting, plan state also. The sampler state, we need to set this to linear wrap, because this causes that we can pass over to the sprite badge.draw. We can pass over a source rectangle, so the area we want to draw. This area will be wrapped, so if the size is too large to fit inside the texture, it will just continue at the other side, which is pretty much what we want with this repeated background thing. Alright, let's try it out. Oh, if we call the sprite badge.begin in the middle of our drawing process, we of course need to call end first, and then after the whole thing begin again. And we have to use our begin from here because we need the camera metrics in this begin call again. Okay, let's try it. Oh. This is not working very well. Okay, we need to move these two here, and here comes another sprite batch end, of course, yeah. So let's give it another try, and first let's set the window to 0, because it always appears in the middle of the screen, which is kind of annoying. I think this goes somewhat like this window dot position, like position equals, I think this works some kind of like this. Yes, much better. Okay, so we can already shoot our enemies. Now the background is moving actually pretty slowly. Maybe we have to increase our scrolling speed now, but otherwise I think have a endless repeat now of the backgrounds. So let's increase our scrolling speed. Yes, this works. Okay. So let's do another test run with a little more sprites for now. And I've noticed that the bullets are a bit too big still. So let's change this to 40 and 5. Okay. Wow, now we have a lot more sprites and we can shoot them already. Yeah, of course this looks a little bit boring without any explosions if we kill the enemies, but it's still something. Alright, this is it for today. Let's review what we've achieved. First, we've coded our enemies class and a straightforward moving enemy type. Then we've added a bunch of enemies to our sprite list. Then we've created a basic collision detection logic. After that, we've implemented the player's shooting mechanism. We've drawn a basic bullet texture and added a weapon for the player. Now the player is able to shoot bullets, pressing the spacebar and killing enemies. And last, we've also fixed our bug with the background scrolling. I hope to see you next time when we are going to create a particle engine to create awesome looking explosions and blow some stuff up. If you like my videos, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions regarding game development, feel free to leave a comment, of course. Have a nice day. Bye.